watching NRA TV with Grant Stinchfield.
Mainstream media would have you believe the only threat to America is sitting in the White House, that Donald Trump is to blame for all the world's problems, and watch them scatter when a real-life terrorist decides he's going to blow up the White House, other government sites, and everyone in them. They will try to brush past the story of 21-year-old Hasher Jalal Taheb, a Georgia man who tried to buy rockets and other weapons to attack the White House, says the FBI. Thankfully, Taheb, a radicalized jihadist, was trying to buy all that from undercover FBI agents. The agents started investigating Taheb after a tip. Whoever reported him, thank you. Besides the White House, he planned to attack the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and a D.C. synagogue. Joining me now is the president for the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Doc, it's always good to see you.
Good to be with you, Grant. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, this is a prime example of what you and I have talked about in the past, that they are here, they live among us, they lurk in the shadows, and they do want to do us great harm, these radical jihadists.
Yeah, definitely. And the ideology, as much as we may have decimated the territory that they had, the ideology of ISIS, of jihadists, is as much of a threat as it's ever been. We just had an 18-year-old here arrested 2 days ago who called cops and wanted to kill some of them, and was shot upon apprehension. And now it turns out that it was reported that it was psychiatric, but now it turns out he was being followed by joint counterterrorism and was adherent to ISIS. So as we saw with the bombing in Syria, we lost 4 Americans as a result of an attack. So the war is as hot as it's ever been. They're going to continue to spread their ideology, and we need to be on the offense. We've been playing defense too long. So the offense is not only getting these radicals when they begin to do a plot, like this guy wanted to buy a car and then wanted to buy weapons, etc. We were all over it. But we need an offense into the ideology, into the communities that are separatist, if you will. And we're really so far from that. It's very sad.
And so it's going to take buy-in from the community as well, the Islamic community across America, to offer up tips. If they see something, hear something, they've got to say something. Apparently that happened in the case that I was talking about, where the FBI set up a sting operation. But I don't think the FBI can do this on its own unless we get buy-in from these communities to help.
Oh, absolutely. And as we saw with the current establishment in the Islamic community, the Islamist establishment, they even did everything they could to stop the countering violent extremism, the CVE programs in Minneapolis and elsewhere. And now we see the congresswoman out of that area, which was had 40 to 50 jihadists come out of the suburban Minneapolis area that went to Somalia and Syria, is even more of a Hamas supporter, anti-Semite, and radicalizer than. Now we have her in the howls of Congress, and an apologist, certainly not condoning terrorism, but an apologist for the ideologies that I believe are precursors to radical Islamism, to militancy, which is the separatism, the anti-Westernism, the bigotry against Jews and others. This has to be treated, and we have to start to work not just countering violent extremism, but countering Islamism. And we really need to start to have a strategy where, forget the leadership in the Muslim community, most Muslims on the grassroots, like I believe this was turned in by a community member who saw this person acting oddly in Georgia and reported him. So at the end of the day, most Muslims want to begin the 12-step process of reform, but we need both a public and private partnership to do that.
Yeah, and I applaud whoever it was that turned this guy in. So, you know, Al-Qaeda had started this whole idea of recruitment on the internet and offering up public relations campaigns and slick videos. ISIS, in some respects, tries to copy that. We talk about ISIS decimated on the battlefield, but ISIS is still well and good with the ideology. I think the fighters you had on the battlefield have just now spread, the ones that haven't been killed. What are you seeing when it comes with the online recruitment, the public relations campaigns from these radicalized groups still happening in America? Has it been beaten back at all?
It's actually, as we get more complacent and the terror attacks and the stories become more commonplace, but actually less reported, the Islamists, the precursor ideology, are actually becoming more problematic because they seem to have more freedom to operate in demonizing America and demonizing and working on conspiracy theories about Israel and other things. So The ideological battle, I think we're worse than we've ever been. So we need to start to have think tanks, universities, and others begin to counter the Islamist ideology of theocratic Islam. Why? Grant, because look at the jihadists in Turkey. They're running the government. The Brotherhood is basically running the government, and Erdogan is being given free rein. Iran's ideology is spreading. Assad, the Islamists in Egypt with the Brotherhood. Qatar and the Khashoggi operation seem to use that to push back against the Saudis and others who are our allies that are now finally waking up to the threat of political Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood. So ideologically, globally, we're worse than we've ever been, even though the terror war, which is the tip of the iceberg, we're better than we've ever been.
All right, so this is what scares me the most. And I've taken criticism in saying it, but I believe it's going to be very hard to beat back that ideology. This is generations upon generations. I would say since the beginning that humans were starting to roam the earth and religions took shape, that there was this idea that if you're not with us, then you've got to be absolutely slaughtered. I'm not sure we ever fully beat back that ideology. I think there are children being born into homes when we snuff out or crush one terrorist in a drone strike, he's got kids that want to grow up and avenge their father's death.
Well, Grant, you're 100% right, but I would caution against looking at it as just too big and then you sort of throw your hands up and say we can't do anything. It's really, as a Muslim and as an American, it'd be like our founding fathers saying, you know, Christian theocracy, we can't defeat it, forget the American Revolution. And I think this is exactly where Islam is today. We have so many fronts. Tunisia is a front in the war that's winning against Islamism. Secular democracy actually now has been voted in Tunisia. We have a Muslim reform movement where if people would begin to recognize us, like you have by having me on, we would begin to get traction, because I'll tell you, even though there's only 3 or 4 million Muslims in America, we can do more here than you can in any Muslim majority country. So why not operationalize, just like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter affected the Middle East, even though those are Western ideas, we can operationalize liberty and begin to work with Muslim movements that can change civil society globally without ever needing a military solution, which is our only solution right now.
Yeah. It takes a very special group to be able to embrace liberty and freedom and democracy and self-resilience. It really takes honesty to have a society like that as well. Look, America struggles with it at times. I look at what happened in Iraq after Saddam Hussein had fallen. They cheered it. But then in the end, I think there were so many in that society that didn't want that liberty. They knew how to operate best under control. Not something I would choose, but it makes the battle all that much harder. I will say this, never ever give up the battle. My only reason for bringing this up is it may be a battle we have to fight maybe forever.
Well, I think, remember, there's been a lot of studies that have shown, and just like the Bolsheviks and others can take over society with just 10% of the population, we underestimate the power of a very potent 10, 15% that believe in liberty that can begin to change the mindset. We just saw a Saudi woman who left and got clemency in Australia and now is going to Canada to get asylum. So she escaped the torture of the Saudi regime. There are many prisoners of conscience that can become the Solzhenitsyns, the Nathan Sharanskys of the Muslim world that many of us know and are being ignored right now. We can begin to lift up those icons of freedom, no different than Václav Havel did with Czechoslovakia and others. And we need to start doing that in the Muslim community. And I think you'll start to see some significant shifts in assessment of how dominant the voices of liberty can be.
Well, I hope and pray, and I mean this, that you are correct on this, Doctor, because it is of the utmost importance, not just for their lives, because freedom and liberty is everything. Once you realize the benefits of those types of things, it is liberating. And certainly in those countries that need liberation, freedom and liberty and democracy are certainly the way I would choose their path for it. But it also means a lot for America, too, because when those countries embrace those kinds of things, it makes the world to be a much safer place. Buddy, I always appreciate you coming on. They're fascinating discussions. Thank you, and thank you for the work that you're doing out there to raise awareness about this very important topic.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, Grant.
All right, you got it. That's going to do it for us this week. We are back here Monday, 9 Eastern Time. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Grant Stinchfield for NRA TV. Have yourself a fabulous weekend.
You're watching NRA TV with Grant Stinchfield.